Hello, everyone, and welcome to the part three of our Docker Essential series. Today, we're going to be doing a hands on exercise on using our Dockerfile to set up a sample application, and we'll see some extensions that we can use in terms of our VS Code to help make connecting to containers much easier as well. So, let's begin. Last video we saw how to create a simple container. We can create an Ubuntu container from the terminal itself. We learned about Docker files. So now let's see how we can set up our own Docker file. Now I already have a Docker file here that I have created. It's very simple, and let me just explain each line so that you can understand what it is. So first it begins with this line which we use called from Ubuntu 20.04. And this from keyword is essentially used to create our base image. So we're going to build on top of an Ubuntu OS, and that's why I'm using this. And what type of application I'm trying to create here, it's essentially just going to have Apache and PHP, which is running on top of Ubuntu. A very simple and widely used tech stack, and we'll see how easy it is to set up a system like this in with using Dockerfile. Now the second value here is env, which we're using. This is used to set any environment variables. As you're aware, we can set environment variables that can be used to access. So in this case, I'm using Debian frontend equal to non-interactive, so that our terminal doesn't ask for inputs. Right, when you're trying to install uh, any new modules, it asks yes or no. So this is just to avoid that, and set the terminal as non-interactive mode. The next command that you should be aware of is the run keyword. This is used to run any commands that you would like inside the container. So similar to like when you have an Ubuntu instance, you would go and you would run apt get install update, apt get install something, or if you have a Red Hat instance, you would do yum install this and that. So you can give all of that commands inside this run command here. So here I'm just doing an update. I'm installing Apache, PHP, and doing a clean. So like all of the commands that you would essentially run, you can use the run keyword. The third command here is a copy command, and what copy essentially does is that it's used to copy files from our host system into our container. So in this case, we give the path to the file which is there in our host system, and the second parameter is just going to be the destination path in the container. So here what essentially happens is it copies index.php file from our host machine. If we see in our working directory, I've created a simple index.php file which just echoes a message, and this is currently in our host system. And what this command is going to do is, in our container, it's going to create a folder where www.html, and inside this html directory, it's going to copy this index.php and paste it there. So after our container is created, we'll be able to see that. Then our next command is the expose command. Now this is a very important command if you want to expose your containers so that we can access it, right? So the port 80 is by default used by web servers, and our Apache that we're going to install as well is going to be listening in on the port 80 in our container. So if we need to access our containers port 80 from the outside, we need to first expose it. So that's what this command does. And finally, the cmd command is essentially used to run any kind of commands that you want. So let's say you want your Apache to get started as soon as your container is created. So this is where you would put it. So here I'm just saying that Apache needs to run, and all of this -d and foreground will be appended as parameters. So essentially it would be Apache 2ctl space -d space foreground. And this is just going to begin up our Apache server when our container starts. Okay, so now to execute our Docker file that we have created, I'm going to be opening up a new terminal. I'm going to click on new terminal here, and here, if I do an ls, you'll see that my Docker file and the index.php is in this file. So since I have my Docker file in this, I can just give the command docker build, which is used to build out our image from this docker file -t, and I'm going to give the name that I want our image. So I'm just going to say Apache PHP image, and I'm going to give a dot here since it's in the same path. If not, if our docker file is in a different path, I would essentially give the path to our docker file here. So I'm going to hit enter, and now you can see that our docker image is getting created, and it essentially creates goes through line by line from a docker file and loads up the images, and it's quickly just created. Now I can run the command docker contain docker image ls. So let me run docker image ls, and you'll see now that the Apache PHP image that we created is right here. So that we just now created with our command has been created. Now to create the container from this, so what we have just now built is an image. Now using this image we need to build a container. So let me run docker container ls to show you that right now we don't have any active or running containers. So to create the container from our image, I'm going to type in the command docker run -p. I'm going to use to map the ports. This is called port mapping, and I'll just explain what this does. So when we give this command, it maps our host machine's port 8080 into the containers 80. So what essentially it does is when we're accessing our localhost port 8080, it will be redirected as a request into the containers port 80. And if you remember how we exposed the port 80 for Apache, this will essentially allow us to access the containers Apache from our host machine. So that is what this does, and we're going to give a name for this. So let's just and sorry, we have to give the image name that we want to use for creating this container. So the image name is obviously Apache PHP image, the same name that I have given for the image here. I'm going to hit enter, and yeah, so now this is already created. So now the container should be created. So if you I'll be going over to the Docker desktop now to show you, and you can see here that a container has been created with a random name since we have not given it a name while creating it. The port map is to 8080 and 80. So now let me just open up localhost 8080, and you'll see that we have our Apache installed and successful here. So great. So now this works properly. Now we also have an index.php that we should have copied over if you remember. So let me type in index.php, and you'll see that even our index.php is working fine. Okay, so now that we have successfully created our container, I'll show you how to log into that container, or essentially just use the terminal to access our container's contents, right? So what we can do is we can use the command docker container execute hyphen -it, and I need to give the container ID here. So each container has an ID. So to just get that, I can go to the Docker desktop here and get this container ID /bin/bash, which will open up a bash terminal for us. So now if you see our value here change, so now we're accessing the values inside the container. So now if we do an ls, you'll see that we're now inside our Ubuntu instance. So you can cd into this path that we told to copy the index.php into. So cd/var www and html. I'm going to do an ls here, and you'll see our index.php is here, and I can do vim index.php, and you'll see that it says like vim is not found, similar to how you would do in an Ubuntu instance. Currently we are actually in an Ubuntu instance, so we can just type in apt get install vim to install vim here. This will just take a second. It's installing it into our container. Great. So now our vim is installed, so now we can run the same command here. And as you can see here, we are able to access our particular index.php inside the container. So I can, let's say, change this value running with PHP. I'll just hello world. I am accessing this from the container. Container. Okay, I'm going to save this, and let me go back to the browser and refresh here. Now you can see that it is getting changed from the browser as well. Another important tool that we can use to access the values inside the container is using this extension, which I will show you. You can install this dev containers extension if you're using VS Code. And what this allows you to do is that instead of accessing each values from the terminal, you'll be able to directly attach your VS Code into a container. So after installing that, in the bottom left, you'll get this open a remote window option. So if you click on this and click on attach to running container, it'll show up all the active containers right now, and I can click on our container that's running. So this will take a minute to just attach itself to our running container. If I open up the file explorer, it says that it has an option to open folder. So just click on this. Here I can attach it to any subdirectory inside our Ubuntu container. So I'll just give /var /www /html. So we have our HTML folder. I'll just give OK, and it's now attaching itself to that particular directory. And you'll see here now we got our files that was is essentially inside the HTML subdirectory. We go to index.php. I can say updating from here. I'm just going to update it from the terminal here, from the VS Code here. And if I go back to the browser and refresh, you'll see that it is working here as well. So this is a really good tool to use, which will speed up your development process as well. Okay, so that is it for this video. So in this video, as we saw how to create a Docker file, how to create an image using it, and how to create a container. I also showed you how to access the container from the terminal, as well as using an extension in VS Code to access it as well. So thank you so much. In the next video, we'll be going over more advanced concepts in terms of Docker. We'll go over networking, volumes, Docker Compose, and so on. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.